I hereby call the Brockton School Committee to order. We are at the Dr. William H. Arnone School Theater, 135 Belmont Street here in Brockton, 02301. It being Tuesday, March 5th, 2024, 7 o'clock. I'd like to read the following to the record if I could. Welcome to the meeting of the Brockton School Committee. This is the agenda that will be discussed this evening. Please note that hearing of visitors is included. I want to thank Lisa for providing it to me tonight on behalf of Melinda. If you have a statement or question, please give your name to the secretary, which we have everybody signed in. Again, it's limited to 3 minutes in scope. In addition to attending tonight, the public can view this meeting via television on Comcast Channel 8 and also on the 1071 HD version, and also online via the following link, which is www.youtube.com/TheBrocktonChannels. I have called the meeting to order. I'd establish a quorum at this time. Mrs. Sullivan? Yes. Ms. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes?
Here.
Ms. Oliver?
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Here.
Ms. Azak?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
I'm here as well. We've established a quorum. I'd ask us to please stand and salute the American flag at this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda item 2 is the hearing of visitors. I'd like to read the following into the record again. Pursuant to school committee policy, each person requesting to speak shall be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. Since this period is limited to 15 minutes, a total of 5 people shall be permitted to speak on a first-come, first-served basis. That's our policy. We have waived it. We will continue to waive it tonight. We have more than 5 people that have signed in. So out of really the fairness of everybody that took the time to come here tonight. But at some point, we have to, as a committee as a whole, talk about this because we do have a policy in effect. So at this time, Casey Wilkinson is the first person to speak tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. Is this on? Can you hear me? Good evening. My name is Casey Wilkinson, and I am a teacher and a constituent in the district. I wanted to speak tonight on behalf of some of my fellow middle school teachers. Over the past few years, we have endured the behaviors experienced by our high school teachers. We have been called a multitude of names, such as fat F and B, F and C word, the white devil, F and a-hole, and D rider. We have also been told to F off, stop riding my D, get off my D. These are words that are spoken often. These are words that your children are hearing. These words know no bounds. These are the words that need to stop. Students, yes, at the middle school level, also use their physical presence to intimidate staff from telling us they know where we live, to what cars we drive, to blocking our exit to leave a room. I see the defeat, I see the exasperation. I have seen teachers want to leave, and I have seen them go. I feel the helplessness, I feel the worry. Where is the support for us? You hold us accountable for many, many things, and we meet those challenges. Where is the accountability on the students? Where is the accountability on the parents? The parents you need to reach are not watching these meetings. They are not following the Brockton community pages. How are you reaching them? Where are the supports for the building administrators? I am purely speculating as a classroom teacher, but I bet your building administrators feel just as exasperated when there are students in their building ruining their culture, ruining their positivity, ruining the academic learning time of most of the students in the building. What are you and central administration doing about this? The era of pitting one school against another needs to stop. Kathy Smith once said she was told Brockton is a district of schools and not a school district. You have made it that way. And what have you done to change this? We should be acting as one and supporting all. Every building will have tougher years than others. Why aren't we growing together? As Stacy McDonald said, we need action. We are constantly talking about 100 to 200 students affecting the high school. What is the number at the middle schools? What is that number at the elementaries? What is the protocol for all chronic offenders? What are the steps to intervene? Are you identifying them? What are you doing to mitigate their behaviors at the elementary, middle school, and high school level? It feels like Groundhog Day to us teachers. These students are repeatedly disrupting the learning environment and nothing seems to change. Enough with PBIS, enough with restorative practices. They aren't working. Teachers are not made whole in the process, and neither are the students who are subjected to their wrongful, repeated behavior. People might question why I keep harping on the negative, because I believe we must address the negative to get to the positive. I have to be an advocate for the Damaris, the Anicias, the Jayleens, the Wands, the Derricks. I have to help make their future Brockton Public School experience a positive one. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to apologize if I mispronounce your name. I do apologize. Mamadou Tahamo. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. It's a little too short for me. Thank you. My name is Mamadou. I was a student of Brockton High, graduated in 2022, and now I go to UMass Lowell, major in political science. I was the class president in 2022, and over the past couple of weeks, I have observed what's happening at Brockton High, Brockton Public Schools in general, and me and my peers in general that have graduated, we're all unhappy. Obviously, if you come from Brockton High, you call it your pride, you love your school, and you don't want to see negative news about your school, and that's all we've been seeing. Over the past couple of weeks, all I've been seeing is about how Brockton has a National Guard, and obviously that's probably, hopefully doesn't happen. But yesterday, I'm on spring break, I went to Brockton High, and I observed what's happening around the school. And all I saw was chaos, no staff, no control. I talked to teachers, students, all they told me was that even if they take students to get disciplined, they don't. There's no staff in the hallways, kids do whatever they want, and we can't be having that. The schools need to do better for our students, for some of whom they actually want to learn. For a school of almost 4,000 kids, we tend to focus on maybe the 300 kids, and we fail the other 3,000, and that's not what we should be doing. We should be focusing on our students, providing them all the sources that they need, providing them the learning abilities, resources, and to just make sure we support them to graduate, and I think that's what we're doing. And one of the main things is we fail student engagement. I feel like we're at the table talking about solutions when we don't engage students. I think before I left high school, we had something called Student Voices. As class president, I led it, me and Ellen, and I came back yesterday, it's almost dead now. You have to include the students in the solutions. The students know what's going on. Until we do that, we will not come with something viable. We are adults talking on the table, and we cannot come up with proper solutions until we include the kids that are in the problem, or the kids that are already with those kids. And another thing that I don't want to see is, I talked to a kid yesterday at the main office. He's like, I'm transferring. I was like, why are you transferring to another school? Brockton provides you everything you need. And I know that it's providing me everything that I need from middle school to high school, and I'm grateful for that. So I think no kid should ever have to transfer district. My siblings go here, my cousins go here, and I want them to remain here. So please, I would say to the school district, do not fail our kids and do not fail our teachers. Provide them with the resources that we need so we can have a better district. Thank you.
Thank you. Riley McAvoy, please. Riley McAvoy.
Good evening. I'm a senior at Brockton High. I'm super glad to be part of a ton of programs, the band program. I have my band booster friends over here. I saw another band student enter. I do as much when I come with my teachers. I do my best to be friends with everyone. I'm friends with Mr. McCaskill. We talk almost on a daily. I spoke to a lot of the committee members as I was entering, and I wanted to talk about my experiences and my time here at Brockton High, because I'm leaving soon. I have 2 months. But I'm glad to say that I haven't had that many negative experiences. I've had a ton of friends who can say the same as well, that we as a student body as a whole have to take a back and look at how much we've come to make as 100%, not just the 10% or the 15% that might be the bad students, but all of us in total should really be seeing the positive outcomes we made. I mean, I just got a message right before the very first meeting earlier about how we have a new South Korea program where we're gonna go visit that in May, and that is super impressive because it's completely funded, and I'm very glad to say that we're gonna have that opportunity. But I'm also glad to say that the opportunities provided at Brockton are in such a mass that we as a total should really look onto the good students and not have the media point out, we are the worst school in the country. We are not. We are one of the best. We were voted 10 years ago. We were considered one of the best in the country. And I'm glad to say that I'm a part of that. I'm glad to say that almost all of you are a part of that. And even some of you up here are part of that. I'm glad to say that I'm part of that too. My Brockton experience, I've been able to make friends with everyone. I had a conversation in the hallway with a teacher today. I'm not going to name drop her. Respect you though. She and I've never spoken a word to her before. But we had a conversation about the future of Brockton High and how she feels completely safe. How she feels as if those are her friends. And she understands there are students who do not listen. There are students who do wander the halls. And there are students who do not listen to the rules. But I'm not part of that. I know my friend over in the back over there is not part of that. And I know most of us weren't part of that. And I know that mass majority of us are still not part of that. We are being seen as one of the negatives in the country. Not just the state, not just the city, but the country. And to point that out really hurts to end off my year like that, to end off my Brockton experience like that. So I want to be able to make a difference. I'm going to come back here next week. I know this because I know my time's almost up. I'm going to have all of you guys here, hopefully, and I'm going to make this difference. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Teresa Mighty, please. Teresa Mighty.
Hello.
Good evening.
Okay. Hi. Good evening. I'm a parent, and I think that Mr. Thomas should come back. He was really good. He got a lot of teachers. He got the buses. He did what he's supposed to do. And we didn't have these issues when he was here, you know. And we keep saying we need more teachers. Well, put them back in. You know, get some teachers. Help these kids that need it. Some support and everything. Don't just vote them out. Put them back in. All right.
Thank you. Michael Slade, please. Michael Slade.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
By simply showing up here tonight, it shows there's a level of commitment and to change, and that should be applauded by all you guys. As introduced, my name is Michael Slade. I've been a resident of Brockton since 1991. I, too, attended Brockton High. But my sad reality is I didn't make it past the 9th grade. I indulged in gangs, violence, and drug dealing, which ultimately led to my incarceration at the age of 16. I personally know the consequences of misguided thinking and actions, but I also believe if there were more tangible resources or people at that time, it probably could have prevented my descent. I say that to say this. How can I help? What can I do to change the narrative? Where does my level of culpability lie? Am I guilty of negligence, ignorance, and a minimalization of issues that now have since ballooned out of control? These are some of the questions we all have to ask ourselves. There's enough culpability to go around. Systemic, parental, and children alike. Let's stop using our index fingers and start using our thumbs. This is a problem that we can fix. Now, the speech has actually stopped, but it's more or less like we think about all the problems that we're running into on a consistent basis. It's a lot of you, system, but we have yet to really come together. I guess this is probably us coming together, but coming together and really internally finding the problems. I do a show on Mondays called The Rant. It's about mental health. This is something that our kids understand there's a stigma over our heads. There's a proverbial wall in front of us that we are not knocking down. You know what I'm saying? And that starts internally. Before we even send our kids out to school, you have to notice the red flags that are being shown to you. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the times we ignore these things. And we look back at all these talking points, like 1,100 police calls within a year. You got Fox coverage, you got WCVB, you have injured staff, just as of Monday. You have all these things happening right now, and we got parents up here saying you. Let's stop sending these kids to school with all these problems. Let's start getting involved with our kids a little more, because we're all acting as if these are extended parents, but we also have a responsibility before we send our children out. Waking up in a positive energy, disseminating great energy for our children before you send them packing, and expect them to do great. And the worst part, I believe, is us standing like we're beyond reproach as parents. When you get that call, and some teacher's scared, or there's a student that's education's being taken away because your child is in there acting foolish, and then get called, and then have the unmitigated gall to say, no, that's not what's happening. Wait a minute, that's the problem. That's perpetuating the cycle and the stereotypical behavior that we have to conquer. So I'll say this in closing, guys. We gotta start using our thumbs instead of our index fingers, guys. Thank you for your time.
Cynthia Hodges, please. Cynthia Hodges.
Hi, good afternoon to Mayor Sullivan, the chair, vice chair, and all the school committees. I guess you say, why is Cynthia Hodges always up here? And, you know, but I'm a concerned parent. My kids went to school here. I look out, I want to piggyback off what the young gentleman just said. The concerns, why did you let this problem get to this? You know, that's my question. You know, I want to know beforehand, why did someone not try to get it under control? That's the major problem on it. Just like you say, we can point fingers at Tony, we can point fingers at Mayor Sullivan, we can point fingers, but that's not the issue. The issue is, how did it get to this point? And my second question is why every time there's a fight or something breaks out at Brockton High School, why is the news media the first thing there? You're not there to celebrate a child showing what he has done or what the teacher has provided for them. This is my problem. Come with your camera and recognize what they are doing nice at Brockton High School, not always the negativism. That's why I come here. You know, we can talk, we can put blame, just like the young gentleman said, until it started home. My grandmother was old school. Charity started at home and spread abroad. And that's a true statement here. You have to think about, it deals with the parents got to start. Just like you say, they only here to give you some breakfast, some teaching, some lunch. That's what someone might come for, but that's not it all that's here. But my problem is, recognize the good. Don't recognize the bad, because we need that to happen here at Brockton High. You know, we have a good staff, we have a good committee, we have a good body, we have good people. Show it. Don't continue to, you know, belittle us, defame us. That's what I would call it. It's defaming our character here in Brockton. And I think it's been defamed well long enough. I think we should start from tonight. If you can come out here and support this, go into school and start to support your teachers, your students, and whatever it needs to take. Thank you.
Danny Santana, please. Danny Santana.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not gonna need this. Everybody can hear me, right?
Yes.
All right. So I just came to observe, but three key things that I observed. You're understaffed, your kids don't get acknowledged, and there's a large sense of fear and anxiety with these kids, okay? When you guys start talking about bringing in the National Guards, what you guys are doing is creating animosity in the larger masses of kids that doesn't need to happen. Now, I just got informed there's 3,700 kids in this school, with about only 300 kids that are the problem. Now, if you guys are paying more attention to those 300 than the 3,700, that's a problem in itself. You know, I'm not here to point no fingers, but I want to say a couple of things. I seen a couple good brothers walk into this room that I know from Boston. They ran the streets with me. They were gang members like myself, and they changed their lives. They're in this room right now. A couple of these guys guys need to talk to them, because that's your solution to these kids. People like me, you know, that's the solution to this. You know, all this negative attention that Brockton's getting, Brockton's not the worst school, not at all. But you guys are paying attention to all the wrong things. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Tatiana Jean Noel. Tatiana Jean Noel, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Tatiana Jean Noel. I am a 2011 Brockton High grad, social worker, business owner, and most importantly, a sold-out child of God. I have watched over the last few weeks snippets and full clips, and one thing I can start by saying is I'm not coming before you today with any anger, animosity, but I'm coming to you with a heart. I'm coming to you with a heart full of gratitude and a deep sense of purpose. Our journey in education is not merely about imparting knowledge, but about nurturing souls and shaping futures. I recently stepped down from a position in one of our local schools, and I can 1000% without a doubt tell you that the minds of our young people are being formed as early as the pre-K classrooms. So today I want to share a story of a transformation, mentorship, and the power of collective unity. We all have encountered students who test our patience and challenge our resolve. Yet it is in these moments of adversity that the true essence of mentorship and education shines brightest. I want to speak of a former student, once rebellious, labeled a nightmare, a student who was kicked out, suspended over 20 times in their first year, just as a freshman alone. This teen routinely fought, but wait, now I've heard that she is a 3-degree holder, one more pending, and a law-abiding citizen, so I'm told. This student is not a random student, but the student is me. My journey was not solitary. It was marked by the unwavering support and the care of dedicated teachers and mentors, 2 of which who stand in this room today. One in spirit, Mary Collins, may she rest in peace. And another in the physical, Assistant Superintendent Michelle Connors. And many and many more who strived and worked with me. The Azure Social Science Department. Go Azure. Between the years of 2008 and 2011, that I will forever be grateful for and owe my transformation to. I honestly can't stand before you in less than 3 minutes and ooh, okay, never mind. It's 20 seconds. I thank you. Brockton, amazing, bye.
Jamal Gooding, please. Jamal Gooding.
Got some big guys. Come on in. I want everybody out here. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Jamal Gooding. For most of you that may not know me, I am the executive director and founder of PAC, People Affecting Community Change. And it's what we've done consistently prior to COVID, during COVID, after COVID, working with those who may be experiencing barriers coming home from prison, those young adults that could not find employment and needed development, those who don't speak English as a primary language in this city, connecting them with food, transportation, housing, wraparound services. It's what we've done. And we've done it as a team. That's right. I came in here last week amidst a lot of anger. Many had a lot of complaints, and rightfully so. And I said in that meeting that Brockton is great. Brockton is awesome. We're a great city. And there's a lot that want to help and have great intentions and a lot of passion. But we came in here last week and said, we can help. Let us go into your school right now, 100 guys, free, and restore public safety. Let us bring our proven staff that have worked in other schools and brought about proven outcomes to connect and identify those who are a part of the 10% that may be causing troubles. And then let us go ahead and help and work with the staff in place to connect these young adults to some new resources, some 21st century resources, solution-based resources. I brought with me tonight a crew, culturally competent, street workers, DYS workers, professionals, fathers, speaking different languages. And I say to the school committee and the mayor tonight, I'm upset. We met 7 days ago. I have went to the mayor's office, the superintendent's office, met with the principal, had so many countless parents call me and say, hey, we want to go with you. What is it going to take for someone to make a decision about keeping our staff and our students safe? If money is an issue, we'll work for free. If you say go in there tomorrow morning, we'll be in there tomorrow morning. Now, as a professional, I understand that there is also a process that we may have to be undergone. But I'm going to challenge our mayor, our superintendent. I'm going to challenge the principal. I'm going to challenge you parents. Whatever we got to do for somebody to make a decision, it needs to be made now. Brockton is great. It will be great. Let us not be the reason that it doesn't continue to be great. Thank you.
Julie Fairfield, please. Julie Fairfield.
Hi.
Hi.
First, I want to start with a positive, because I try to be positive. I feel like last week.
Julie, I don't think they can hear you. They said.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Me? Dang. Well, they can hear me downstairs. I feel like a lot of what's put in the media is all the negative, like that young man was saying. I feel like even if you say something positive, sometimes that will get twisted, and it will be because, you know, people want salacious. That's what they want to view. And I have some great kids. I have some really, really awesome kids. I have some kids that someone across the room will say something and they'll think I've heard it. And they'll, you apologize to her right now. I'm telling you, some kids, and not necessarily kids who want to do anything in math class, but they don't want my feelings hurt or want me to feel bad. There are great, great students at Brockton High School. There are. And we're doing them a disservice. And I know that there are people that are trying. The administrators are working so hard to try to clear out those halls. I know they are, but there was a gentleman who spoke last week about students not feeling connected. The first year that I was at Brockton High School, we had homeroom. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy to some people, but I loved it. I only had it for 1 year, and I had sophomores. But those kids knew me, the rest, the high school, even though it was only in their sophomore year that I saw them every morning for like 20, 25 minutes. I would help them with their math homework. They would talk to me. I'd bring them donuts. I mean, it was awesome. And so that's a relationship that they can build that doesn't have anything to do really with academics. It's a teacher in the school they can feel connected to that always has their back, is gonna go to bat for them, is gonna help them out. And I don't know if any other teachers liked it. Maybe not. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, you just go up to homeroom, you take attendance. It's like, oh, fun. But I loved it. I got to know kids in a different atmosphere. And I think we really need to bring that back. I hope that we can bring that back because I think that would help for some of these students to feel a connection to the school, because it's someone that is outside. I had some kids that got into some trouble, but they knew that I wouldn't judge them. They knew how I was, and so they knew that there was someone that they could talk to. And I really think that we need that. And I'm just really surprised no one's talked about it, and I'll be real fast. It really upset me at the end of the last meeting, the lack of decorum. We need to set an example, and I feel like we just really, we're telling the kids, this is how you need to act. And it wasn't just the members here. I was trying to get people to stop. I don't know why, but as adults, we need to take control of we need to try to take control of that anger, because we're asking our kids to.
We now go on to agenda item 3, which is the report of Superintendent of Schools, Dr. James Cobbs, please.
So we have a short agenda today. First thing on the agenda is the acceptance of a donation to the Arnone School. It's in your packets, 700 books that are donated from the Voya Foundation for pre-K to 5, grade pre-K to 5, for the Arnone School classroom library.
Any questions? It'd be a form of a motion. We'd have to formally take a vote to accept that as a gift.
Motion to accept the gift for the Arnone. Motion to accept the gift for the Arnone School of 700 books.
The motion was made by Mr. Sullivan. It was properly seconded by Ms. Azak. I'll just read the roll. Mr. Sullivan? Yes. Ms. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes? Yes. Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Azak?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. The gift has been recognized and it has been accepted by the committee.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda, item B, is the FY 2025 budget planning by City CFO Troy Clarkson and Interim School Business Administrator Patricia Boyer.
Good evening, Ms. Clarkson. Clarkson, I think they were already included in the packet.
Oh, good. All right. Excellent. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm pleased to be with you tonight. And with us, too, is Interim School Business Manager Trish Boyer, who has worked tirelessly and has become an invaluable member of the team. I'll speak briefly during my presentation about some of the work that she's doing, particularly with grants. What I'd like to do tonight is offer you some concrete steps that the school committee can take to address some of the fiscal issues we're experiencing. I know that there has been some concern on the school committee, on the city council, from members of the public, that the challenges that we face have been discussed for some time, but that we're looking for action. So what I will bring to you tonight are recommendations for specific steps that you, the school committee, can take to address some of the fiscal challenges we face. I will tell you before I begin that some of these decisions are difficult. Some of them will require us collectively to make some realizations and some admissions, but I do believe that the time for action has come, and I'm here to recommend some steps to be taken to ensure that the Brockton Public Schools, and indeed the city of Brockton, remain solvent moving forward. So just to give you a very brief overview of the current situation. This is very similar to a slide that I provided to you a few months ago. We've operated collaboratively for some time now with the school and the city finance teams, not only meeting regularly, but working collaboratively. Members of my staff work very closely with member of Dr. Cobb's staff, with Trish. We have that integrated approach. We meet together. We share information. There is little distinction between the school and city finance teams, all in an attempt to try to bring some order and some consistency to the finances and to give you a full picture. And when I say you, I mean members of the school committee, members of the public, our faculty, our students and parents, everyone deserves to understand exactly what the situation is. At this point, I should tell you that, as I've stated before, that Open Architects has been also an invaluable partner in this. They were brought on by DESE at the beginning of the challenges that we faced. We have worked very, very closely with them. Their contract with DESE is ending, and we have asked them for a scope of work. That scope of work has been reviewed by Dr. Cobbs and our team, by the city's legal team, by the procurement officer, and one of the definitive steps that I would suggest we need to do to move forward is to keep them on the team. One of the things we need to do is make sure that we have an FY25 budget that reflects your priorities, and I've said this to you many times. A budget is the most important policy statement of a community. It tells the public what a community values, and so it should be reflective of your values as the elected school committee members.
Bless you. Bless you.
We're here on March 5th, and we need to be able to put together an FY25 budget that reflects those values and your priorities. Open Architects is a critical partner in that, and given the fact that there is a reduced staff in the school finance office, having their support is critical. So I would urge you to urge Dr. Cobbs to move forward and execute that contract. So the current state of the FY24 budget, and nothing I'm saying here should be a surprise to anyone. We do have multi-million-dollar challenges in transportation, special education, and personnel. The team has worked closely, and we are identifying, and I know that once Open Architects provides their report to the Secretary of Education, it will be made available to the school committee and to the public, and so some of those specifics in very short order will be able to be discussed publicly with you. But it is clear that because of those cost pressures, we need to identify savings so that we do not finish FY24 in a similar fashion that we finished FY23. One of the challenges, and this is a long-term challenge, is that we need to develop a new chart of accounts. That chart of accounts is essentially the accounting roadmap for the schools. So it sets forth different categories of spending so that we can accurately track how the money is being spent. And as we've discussed over the years, in fact, we now believe for as many as 10 years, the money has been kept in this 199 account, which was sort of a catch-all where money was placed and then dispersed. What we want to do moving forward is have a budget where the actual budget in our accounting system reflects the budget that you vote in June. And so at any time, on any day, we can provide you with an accurate update of what the spending is. We need to fix the model of how we manage grants, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And again, I believe we need to continue with Open Architects. So what I believe we need to do as a community, and I've been in public service in both elected and appointed positions for 30 years, and the kind of strife that we see and the frustration that was expressed at the meeting last week, and the divisions, the very divisions on this school committee, I believe all of that energy can and should be focused into finding solutions, because we clearly have a public that cares deeply about this city and this school district, and members of the school committee who equally care and want to find solutions. So what I present to you tonight, members of the school committee and members of the public, are definitive solutions that I believe, steps that you can take to save money, to put us in a strong position to finish FY24 in a very strong position, and to set us up, hopefully, to be able to present a balanced budget for 25 that maintains the core mission of educating students and also keeps the city in a strong financial position. So I'm just going to tick through 5 things that I've come up with. I'm going to identify the challenge and then identify the solution. Our in-house transportation costs are clearly a challenge. We've talked about them almost every meeting. I went back and looked at in December of 2020, when we were originally considering bringing the transportation in-house, there was a detailed estimate that we discussed, and those costs were estimated to be between $7.5 and $9 million per year, depending on how much the city invested in those buses. We now know, and this is just for what I'll call the yellow school buses, the big buses, that those costs are at least $12 million a year. So we've far exceeded those estimates. The solution, I believe, we need to admit that we were wrong. And that's not easy to do for elected or appointed officials. But I believe that that model has not seen the benefits that it was proposed to see, and we need to at least explore other alternatives and at least explore going back to a model where we have contracted services. Maybe that'll work, maybe it won't. But I believe, and I believe this strongly, we need to at least consider it. So one of the solutions, in addition to making a public admission that maybe we were wrong and maybe this wasn't a good idea, that we put out an RFP and determine what those costs would be to have contracted bus service. We put out an RFP, we're not obligated to award a bid, but we'll at least see what that amount will be, and we can compare those costs. Dr. Cobbs and I were discussing this yesterday, and let me be clear, there's not unanimity amongst the team of these options. But what I said is it's healthy to discuss these things, to have disagreements, because it shows we're searching for options and we're trying to do something, and we are fulfilling our obligation to lead in this community. So I don't expect everyone to agree with the things I'm saying tonight, but what I do hope is that the things that I say will spark informed, respectful, deep discussions about what needs to be done for the future of this city. One of the options that we can pursue is, again, admitting that this option was not the best option and declaring those buses surplus, and they can either be sold for cash or the value of that can be rolled into a bus contract to reduce the overall cost. One very definitive thing we can do. The other huge cost pressure in transportation are the individual small vans that are transporting students. That's a very necessary service that we can't cut out. But the manner in which we deliver that service is broken and needs to be fixed. So there are more than 100 individual contractors that provide that service, and the method of those services are not contracts. They're what's called a letter of agreement, and I have copies here with me tonight that simply say between the Brockton Public Schools and a vendor that you're going to provide this service. There's no amount of the fee identified. There's no maximum amount identified. And so right now, those costs are more than $1 million per month that we're spending on this transportation. So we need to smash that paradigm. We need to, again, be willing to admit that this is not the best way to do it, explore other options. There are companies that may provide much, if not all, of that service at a much lesser cost. These agreements, most of them terminate on June 30th of 2024. I believe a definitive step that this committee can take would be to cancel those contracts and start over. We're talking millions of dollars in savings potentially between these two options. The personnel costs, as we know, are also a huge pressure. Now, let me be very clear. What I'm talking about here are not a reduction in personnel, but a change in the way we compensate some people. In my experience, and I have served in a couple of different communities as a town manager, we would offer employment contracts to 2, maybe 3 people. And on a municipal side, typically maybe a fire chief, a police chief, maybe a town accountant, or in this case, a city auditor. Under the law, you can offer those contracts. And on the city side, here in Brockton, that's about what we have, a police chief and a fire chief. There may be a couple others, but not many. In the Brockton Public Schools, there are individual employment agreements with more than 100, and this does not include our unionized workforce. These are non-union. I see some folks from the union nodding their head there. These are non-union employees, and there are over 100 employment agreements with them. Those are very valuable people, so let me be crystal clear. I don't want anyone walking away from this meeting saying that Troy said we should get rid of 100 non-union employees. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that the method by which we compensate these people is extraordinary in its generosity, and is very inconsistent with the way similar people are compensated in other communities. Just to give you a couple of examples on this slide. There are people that have although they're non-union, their compensation in writing is based on the compensation that's afforded to union employees. And then on top of that, there are vacation times, sick buyback. If you don't use any sick time, you get $1,000. Educational incentives, and some of these are very valid pieces of compensation. But when you stack them, all of them, on top of one another, the costs become prohibitive, and it's one of the pressures that's really creating problems for us. There are provisions where employees get a retirement incentive. So if you announce that you're going to retire, you get an incentive for the last 3 years of your employment. But also, and this could be the same person, if you reach a certain milestone of service, then you also get an increase. And let me be clear, I know that there are people watching this, or maybe here in this room, that are impacted and receive this compensation, and they're going to be really upset with me that I'm mentioning this. But my job, I have a fiduciary duty to this city, to this mayor, to this school committee, to tell you the truth and to demonstrate what we need to do to put this city in a position to save itself. So a definitive action that can be taken is that all of these individual contracts I am recommending should be terminated as of June 30th. Again, that does not mean that all of the people get terminated. What it does mean is that their compensation will be consistent with their brothers and sisters on the city side whose benefits are determined by the city ordinances. That is an appropriate and fiscally responsible step to take. We haven't calculated the exact amount, but I am guessing that the savings there would be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So those folks would be employees at will and could still be employed and have good, long, fruitful careers like I have enjoyed. Now, there are other things we can do, and this is something we've talked about. There's opportunities to combine city and school operations. There's formal methods to do that. The City Council has talked about it. I know you've talked about it. I have overseen those sorts of mergers before in other communities where I've worked. I could very easily see the finance operations combining and all working together. Human resource, facilities, I mean, there are lots of opportunities. Those are more long-term discussions, but I put it up here so that it was clear that those are things we can do too to affect long-term savings, but as importantly, if not more so, long-term efficiency in the way we do business. We've talked a lot about grants over the last few months, and that is a huge issue that still is creating fiscal challenges for us. that expired grants are still accruing costs as of this day. Now, this is where I need to mention the incredible work that Trish Boyer is doing for a couple of months now. And she's working tirelessly in cleaning up those grants. And so I need to give that credit because her work is generally unseen, but it is not unappreciated. And the work that she's doing to contribute to that fiscal stability is absolutely incredible. But we need to do it long term. And so what this committee can do is pass a policy on grant management and set a date certain for us to stop billing some of those costs to grants so that we have an end to that problem, and then we can deal with the outcome of it. And in that policy, I would strongly recommend that there be a coordinated effort for grant management. So the way things existed before, there was a grant writer in the school department, then there was a grant manager in the school department. And there was not necessarily, when grants were being accepted, those grant folks didn't coordinate necessarily with HR, payroll, and finance, so that when employees were coming on that were being paid for by grants, there was not a concerted effort to understand how much they should be paid, how long the grant was, when it expired, and when those people should come off of those grants. So this is a technical and highly specific project, but it's one that will definitely provide long-term benefits to the city. The final challenge is procurement. This is something we've talked a lot about. I think this is more than creating fiscal instability. It has created challenges for our local vendors, for the school in terms of obtaining services. The schools for a long time had a procurement person on the school side. That person retired, was replaced with someone who kind of did procurement but did other things. That person has left. And so right now, we're having discussions about how to address that. But it absolutely is a pressing and dire need. Trish is spending a lot of her time on procurement that she could be spending on constructing a fiscal 25 budget or the other myriad responsibilities that she has. And so this is a real pressing need, but what this committee can do is execute a policy on procurement. All the procurement has to be done in collaboration with the city because it has to be done under the auspices of the chief procurement officer, who happens to be an employee of the city, but it is a critical weakness right now that needs to be addressed. So those are definitive things that this committee can do to increase the fiscal stability of this community, to demonstrate that together we are leading, we are actually focusing on solutions and trying to find things that'll move us toward a better tomorrow. As I close, and before I provide the next slide, I want to tell you, because many of you may not know this, I am a native Brocktonian. I was born here. My parents both grew up here. My mom grew up on Plain Street. My dad grew up just down the street around the corner from the Dairy Queen on Ash Street. So I have strong roots, and that's why I came to work here, because I care about this city. I have a stake in the success and the future of this city, and I want to be part of the solution. But what I would suggest tonight, and I mean this in a very positive and constructive way, but we are a proud city with a fighting history, right? We're named the City of Champions because two of the most famous fighters in the history of the United States were from here. So what I suggest tonight is that we put our energy into not fighting with one another, but fighting together for the future of Brockton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. And before we open it up, just in terms of Open Architects, they concluded, again, their client was Desi, right? Their boss was Desi, just for those that are here today. Open Architects and Mr. Plant has been an invaluable resource, but he didn't work for BPS, he didn't work for the city. His team was hired by Commissioner Jeff Riley and paid for by Desi, and we're very thankful. But as of last Thursday, which was the 29th of February, Desi has concluded services. They were charged to look at 24 fiscal year, 25, 26. He will be coming back to us. I know Mr. Clarkson mentioned that the Secretary of Education, who was in Brockton today, and I want to thank Anna and Tony for being there with me and some of the other team today. Secretary of Education is working with Desi right now as well. So Mr. Plant was not able to come tonight. He told us that earlier, but he will be coming back. He also is advocating for steps to be done. This committee as a whole to direct superintendent to come up with some cost analysis. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy, but we have a duty to do it, and we have to do it. I've already asked Dr. Cobbs many times, look with your cabinet, look with your team. We have to look at every penny. We have to look at every penny. We have to look at reductions. We have to look at costs. We have to look at containment measures. On the city side, I've done that as mayor. All my department heads have hiring freeze right now, in-state and out-of-state travel freeze right now. There's a freeze relative to training and conferences. I even canceled the Boston Globe and Boston Herald paper edition because every penny, every penny counts. But this committee, we were all sworn in together on January 1st, this committee has the institutional integrity. We all love Brockton, and we will get there, but we have to make sure that we come out of tonight with directives to Dr. Cobbs and his team. I'm going to open it up now for Mr. Clarkson, any of the membership. Ms. Azak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. So I just have a question. When we first, this was years ago, a few years back, we started discussing bringing in our own transportation company. We were paying, I believe, $12 million to lease them, where we own them now. And we pretty much paid that in 1 year. So to turn around and sell them, we were under the impression it was going to be, I believe, a 3-year, correct me if I'm wrong, but we should start seeing the profits now because our buses have been purchased. We have staff on hand. I'd like to see what it's, to bring in an outside company and go back to where we were before, we were paying that to lease. And every year, when I first came on the committee, I want to say it was $68,000 a bus. Didn't matter if it was a large bus or a small bus. And last I knew, I think it was in the 90s per bus, high 90s. So they just kept going up and up and up. So to purchase the transportation company, it was supposed to save us money. And for us to turn around and sell it, I would really like to look at those numbers because we should be, now it should be a profit where we, we've only had the buses 3 years, I think 3 full years, two and a half maybe. Yeah, 2.5. So I think at the end of the 3rd year, Mr. Petronio, I mean, I can go back and look at old meetings, but I know it was going to be a few years before we started seeing a profit. So rather than leasing them, we own them. We were paying $12 million a year to lease. So I just want the committee, like the new members that might not be as familiar, to turn around and sell them. I would really like to look at the numbers before we make such a large decision to go back to signing a contract. And I don't want to mention the company at the time, but they just kept going up and up on us. And that was leasing compared to owning. It was the same amount of money.
I wholeheartedly agree. I was here then, and I was part of those discussions. I went back today and pulled out the memo from December of 2020 that gave that exact calculation. So I think historically, you're absolutely correct. What I suggest is that we have that robust discussion and look back. Now, did we make the right decision? Are those numbers accurate? What would a contract cost now? Could we save money? It's possible the answer is no. It's possible the answer is yes. And so I'm trying to set us up to be willing to have that conversation and be prepared to make a decision that says maybe we did make a mistake. And so the only way we can find that out is if you ask us to bring you those figures so that you can make an informed decision.
Well, I'd like to request that we get, see what the payroll is as far as our staff that, well, they're employees now, our drivers and the staff, the administrative staff. Take a look at insurance, things like that, the insurance for the vehicles, maintenance. We really shouldn't have that much maintenance. They're brand new buses, and a lot of the stuff should be under warranty. I just know leasing was so expensive that this was always on our wish list for years. And one of the positives through COVID was to acquire our own transportation company. We were able to get the funds. So I would like, those are a couple of items that I'd like. Staffing, what is that costing us? And as far as the extras, insurance, workman's comp, things like that, unemployment, all the expenses that come with having your own employees for the transportation company. And I'd also like to see where are we now with the transportation company that we used previously, because they were the only ones that had enough fleet. You know, they were the only ones that had enough buses to serve what Brockton. We have a lot of schools. What are we, over 200 buses now? And we have the vans and stuff. So we have a lot. So I would like to look at that, because I think a lot of the items are being sent over to the private contracts, whereas we were supposed to get away from that. And that's why we were acquiring a lot of the smaller vans and the smaller buses. Believe it or not, those that are watching, the large buses cost the same as the small buses. And that's mind-boggling that it's double the size and it's the same price. So we did bring on a lot of the vans and the white minivans and things like that. So I'd be more than happy to reach out to you. I'd just really look at it, you know, even if it's another year. It was supposed to help us save instead of leasing.
Right.
And I know there was grants a couple of years ago. There was grants at the Mass Conference for the electric buses. And I'm pretty sure we probably would have qualified for them given the size of our district. So there's a lot of stuff that's out there. You know, we can try to see what's out there to help Brockton. But they are brand new buses. And I think they're a little less than 3 years old. So we should have warranties still on them. And I'd like to know how long the warranties last on our buses. I'd be more than happy to reach out to you.
Wonderful.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Ms. Azak. Mr. Gomes, please.
I had a similar question or thought on the buses. I'm not aware of the details of the purchase that was made, but I was going to ask if we could have the figures for both so we can compare those.
Absolutely.
Also thought it would be cost effective if we had our own, so we're not paying for those every year, but rather have our own drivers. Of course, we're going to have to pay for maintenance and things like that, but it should be less. And things that I was thinking about while you were mentioning that is that with these contracts is they can increase the price every year if they wanted to. You know, if we want the service, we're going to have to pay. And with our own buses, as long as we maintain those, it should be okay. And we're only paying for the drivers and, insurance and things like that. So if we could have the numbers, that would be great to see the pros and cons. One thing that came to mind, and I don't know if we'll be able to look at is, for instance, for TJ, don't we have to do a procurement to work with them if it were to become a...
No, there are vendors that are on what's called a state bid list, and so our procurement office and the law office have both looked at the opportunity to bring open architects on directly, and they've both opined that can be accomplished.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gomes. Mrs. Ehlers, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have a couple things. One of the things that I feel like has been the vibe, if you will, the conversation since I came on, is that the estimate for transportation originally was done incorrectly, or that it wasn't a true feasibility study, because there was a lot of factors that were not considered. One, including the fact that we still don't have a bus depot if we buy all these buses, and we can't afford a bus depot right now. And so, as much as I hate to admit we were wrong, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but at the same time, we're not still fully complete in our transportation department. It's not working, and we don't have a bus depot. And so I kind of feel like at this point, we really do need to look at what is it going to cost us to get out of this, even if we try to consider it at a later date. Because right now, we have an incomplete transportation department, and we can't afford to complete it. And so I think we need to get real with what our expenses are. And in looking at all the school pay code summaries that come through, I challenge the 12 million plus, to be honest with you, that it's even higher than that. I mean, I don't know if you can speak to that, Mr. Clarkson, but I honestly feel like there's a bigger variance between 7.5 to 9 million to 12 million for transportation. I feel like the non-net spending in that number it may average 12, but it feels like it's been higher in some years. Am I completely off?
No, I think you're correct. And again, one of the challenges that we faced is because some of the costs are not all clearly captured in traditional budget lines that we could easily track.
Gotcha.
And so one of the valuable things that Open Architects has been able to do is to really drill down into the details. And this is probably a good time to state that Open Architects is not TJ Plant. He is a vital member of that team. But he has a team of financial analysts and grant specialists and data analyzers who are behind the scenes that we don't see on the Zooms that are developing all of this information for us. So they've drilled down into the detail. Just this evening, we got an email that's looking at this current year's budget and identifying costs that we can bring to the cabinet to be able to save some funds this year and finish the year strongly. And so they started out at lines that were where there was 70 or 80, 90% available from your report.
Yep.
And then brought that down to 75. And so we're looking at bringing all of those funds to bear and having a robust discussion with the cabinet and with Dr. Cobbs about where can we redirect funds so that the funds can be spent on their main focus, and that is on teachers in the classroom. And so having that update of the chart of accounts, it sounds kind of like esoteric, but it's really critical to be able to have a budget where you could say to me or to Trish on any given day, what have we spent so far, and we can accurately tell you.
Well, and that chart of accounts also is, for lack of a better phrase, our roadmap to data-driven decision-making and to base our decisions on where we see the fiscal gaps, correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay, and I just, to be clear, I don't disagree with my colleague, Ms. Azak. I think before we make any kind of decision at all, something of this grand, we should be looking at it like from all different perspectives, but it's just one of those things where at this point, we are like a family that has to make the decision to say, we just can't afford it. Like, this is the year we can't afford it, or that's gonna have to be kicked to next year. And those are some of the tough decisions that are just gonna have to be made, but thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dalis. Ms. Oliver, please.
I have one comment. I don't know if you can hear me, but I think there's a pattern of signing contracts with no fee. I think we just love signing contracts and not identifying how much we're paying these people. We're spending $1 million a month on this contract. Do you have an invoice of how much we're paying this individual's contract?
Yeah, I don't have them here with me, but I mean, that's all information that we can share with you. What I brought with me was a list, and this is obviously all public information, provided by the Transportation Department, a list of the vendors and their typical amount that are being billed per month, and it's just over $1 million. So
you don't have to give me a company name. Can you give me, like, from one company how much they charge for like a month?
It ranges from $600 a month to $23,000 a month to $9,300 a month. And so that's one of the challenges, is that the structure that was set up lends itself to uncontrollable costs. And I think that's, again, that's where the committee can come in. And let me be clear, this is not a reflection on Dr. Cobbs. This method of proceeding was in place when he took over. But it's something that we've highlighted as a very serious area that needs to be addressed, because it's the costs are out of control.
Do we know how many small buses do we have that belongs to us?
We do. I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get that information for you.
62 buses.
About 62
Small
buses. And how many in a day that we use other vendors?
Oh, that's a good question. We frequently, most of the small vendors that do the door-to-door transportation for special education, as well as the out-of-district transportation, we don't use our buses, yellow buses, for that. So
I'd like to have in a week, how many of our buses that we use and how many of the vendors we use.
We use all of our buses all week, every day, but we don't have enough. Like Kathy said, we don't have enough yellow buses.
Yeah, I would like to know who was, if there's a way to find out who was signing those contracts, to just signing them and not put a number in there, It will be interesting to find
Sure.
out. Thank you.
Before I go back to Mr. Gomes, Mr. Sullivan, you haven't asked a question yet.
Thank you, Mr. Coxon. I just wanted to point out that before, when 2019, 2020, when we were looking at these contracts, looking at to buy these buses, things were a lot cheaper then, before COVID. So costs go up, everybody knows. Things are going up every year. And it seemed like a really good idea when we looked at it. So, Mr. Clarkson, how would we control the uncontrollable costs that you mentioned?
Well, so there's two separate operations here, and that's why I had two separate slides. There's the regular yellow bus transportation, and I think the message that I'm hearing is we should really do a deep analysis and come back to you with actual costs for our owning and operating the buses and what the potential costs might be for contracted out. The other is the smaller vans, and I think one of the ways to curb those costs is, first of all, to establish a fee-for-service contract with those vendors. So if you take a student from Brockton to the Cardinal Cushing School in Hanover, the fee is prescribed at X, and the parties agree that that's the fee. What's in place now is, if you take a student from Brockton to Cardinal Cushing, send me an invoice and let me know what you think we should pay you. And so that's resulting in that $1 million a month. And I want to say again, because there are employees who work in the transportation department who are very hardworking, dedicated folks. They're working under a paradigm that was presented to them. So we, as the leaders, need to smash that paradigm and create a different structure so that those costs are not out of control. But right now, there is no way, and we will provide those agreements to you, there's no way to predict or control costs because essentially those, they are not contracts. They are letters of agreement for providing a service. And so I think there's a much tighter, cost-controlled, more responsible way we can engage contractors to provide those services.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan, followed by Mr. Rodriguez, please.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. On your multi-million-dollar challenges page, 2024 budget, it talks about the challenges of transportation, special education, and personnel. What personnel are you talking about on that? Is that the transportation personnel?
No, in this context, it was those individual contracts that I spoke of in the later slide, that those costs of contracts that provide extraordinarily generous benefits.
So you're not talking about special education teachers?
No, absolutely not. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez, please.
Transportation. I love it. The reason why I love it is because when we first opened this transportation company, I did spend some time over there seeing what's going on. We did request an audit of that transportation. We did vote it in. We did request it prior to the two members coming in to have an audit to make sure if the transportation department is actually functioning properly. Are we overstaffed, understaffed, and how to save some funds there. Just a little bit of a history is that at the 11th hour, the owner of the property pulled out on a contract for us to actually have a bus depot, which would have saved the district millions of dollars, including facilities. When we talk about the vendor contracts, I've seen those vendor contracts. There's about 278 of them. I think that when we started this transportation department is that it was failed leadership and the people that were making the decisions there, because a school principal is not a transportation director. A mechanic is not a transportation director. So that's what the problem is. The one-on-one contracts, what we say the small vendors that do the door-to-door or in-district, after speaking to somebody that's in charge there, if the district was to change a certain tier 1 to 2, it will save it will save $3 million. $3 million alone, just changing it by a 15-minute margin. But then we have to negotiate with the union. So that's something that the union really needs to think about because we are in a budget deficit now. In district transportation alone, students that should be transported by our yellow buses is on private vendors, which is about $20,000 a day. So just add that up. Out of district, not this body, but the body before, I'm glad I voted no against it. I'll stand on it every time. You eliminated programs that created out-of-district placement, which increased those transportation costs, and that wasn't vetted out. So those are where the cost actually increased. Also, with those vendors, the first contract that I pulled up and I read was very concerning of who had that contract. It's like it was a criminal enterprise. And I didn't even go through it. It was just the first one. It's very easy to figure out who these individuals are. And when you look at that contract, I'm like, where's the dollar sign? Like what are you providing? You just send a bill. Like, I mean, that's crazy. So that's one of the main focuses is looking at who has these contracts. I spoke to Dr. Cobbs about this to get a grasp on it. Also, our transportation department made over $1 million just in chartering our buses. We purchased those buses to make us money. Where the hell did that $1 million go? Those are one of the things that definitely needs to be looked at. It's under the superintendent. I don't have that authority because if I did some of those contracts that are questionable with certain names on them, certain names, trust me, those should be eliminated tomorrow. Very concerning. And this body's gonna know who they are. The audit's gonna show who they are. The voters are gonna know who they are, if you get my drift. But I don't think it's, for us to take, I don't think it's feasible for us to just make to make a decision now. We have legal counsel here. I think this body needs to speak to our legal counsel because it's very concerning how I see things. It's not like I'm just pulling it out of a hat. This is facts. It's in black and white. You can't hide that. You cannot hide that. So it really needs to be vetted. We can't just make a decision now, obviously, of let's get rid of our transportation department because we didn't have a bus depot, or we have people that are giving out contracts doing door-to-door service because they want to take care of their buddies. That's not what this was made for. In that in-district specifically where our transportation company should be transporting our own students is a big cost. So if you could take $3 million off that and $1 million, minus $4 million from whatever number you're coming up with. So that's one of the crazy things. And you know what's something that it resonates with me as well? Now I know why that audit wasn't done when we requested it a couple of years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I have a couple questions as well. Relative to the vendor contracts, it says terminate all contracts June 30th, 2024. Do you know when notice has to be given? Does it have to be given June 1, 30 days before?
So I did, anticipating these types of questions, I printed out not all of them because there are over 100 of them, but most of these letters of agreement follow a template, and so I have 3 or 4 of them in my hand here. And I believe Dr. Cobbs is correct. There is a provision here that says either party may terminate this contract upon 30 days' notice. And it does, then it says dates, so it doesn't, dates July 1, 2023 to June 30, 2024. So I believe, but certainly defer to legal counsel, that you have the flexibility to terminate some of these agreements. Obviously, the district still has an obligation to provide transportation. So I'm not suggesting you do that tonight. What I am suggesting is we take a very serious look at these, and that's why I suggested June 30th. But if we feel as though some can be eliminated before then, And I will say in response to Mr. Rodriguez, the vendors are a matter of public record, and I'm happy to provide to the committee a list of the current vendors because it's a matter of public record who we pay this money to, and so I will gladly do that.
The other question I have is what would be the harm in seeking out bids and RFPs? I mean, we could have Mike Morris, our procurement officer. Mike's a Brockton High grad, right? He's been working for the city since May of units. What would be the harm in that? I mean, I think we have to be proactive now. Get the RFP that's going to give us a cost containment measure, right? It's going to give us something to compare and contrast against. In terms of these, I'll put my lawyer hat on, I'll take the mayor hat and throw it over there. I've never heard of a letter agreement that has not had compensation defined within it. I just never have heard of that in my legal career. So I think we as a committee, 8 of us, I'll put the hat back on now, we have a fiduciary duty to the voters that we represent to direct Dr. Cobbs, who reports to us, that we have to do something. We have to do something. To seek bids for a single provider or several large, that may solve the issue. And I was 2 hours last night, Mr. Clarkson and I was before the city council. I know Councilor at Large was here, Darren Court, I want to thank him for being here, but you know, when I say this, 19 of us, right? 7 here, myself and 11 over there, we have to come together. But only the 8 of us right now can control BPS in the budget. So we have to think outside the box. We have to act tonight. We have to tell Dr. Cobbs to do that. I've worked with him a lot. He's ready, willing, and able to work with us. But there's no harm in asking Mr. Morris tomorrow, the procurement officer, get an RFP out there. Let's see what it is. Get some bids out there relative to the vans. Because if we don't have those responses, we're competing against ourselves. The other question I have is, and I want to thank you, Ms. Boyer, for jumping in, and you live in Brockton. I want to thank that. You didn't have to take this job, but the grants, I just had a couple questions. I know you're vetting them out every single day, 10%, 15%, 20%. In terms of grants that were never closed out, and this isn't my skill set, so I'm relying on you. How do we close them out, right? Because some are probably state grants, some could be federal grants. How do we close them out as a district? And then what's the ramifications of that? Because if they should have been closed out several years ago, or several fiscal years ago, we need to do it.
Right. So I ran a list of all of the grants in the district, and there were probably about 1,100 or 1,200 grants that had built up over the years. This goes back to 2010. Out of those grants, there were 830 that had a 0 balance. So I put one of the finance staff members on it to start going into the munis accounting system and closing the grants, inactivating those 830 grants. Each grant has between 4 or 5 line items. Some have up to 20 line items. So it's not that she's closing out 830 lines, she's closing out 830 grants that have between 5 and 20 line items each.
Okay.
So there's thousands of line items that she's inactivating. That's in the process now. The other 230 or so grants remaining, there are a handful that are in a deficit. And those are the ones that I'm working on. All of the grants that still have a balance are the ones that I'm working on. So I'm starting with the grants that have a deficit balance. And some of those are multi-year grants, which means that the staffing that was paid out of a particular grant in FY23 should have been rolled over to come out of the new 24 grant, but that never happened. So now I'm changing the staff. So they're still coming out of 23 grants, causing this deficit. So I'm moving the staff to come out of the correct grant. That's clearing up most of the deficits. And then there are some grant deficits that have a positive balance in them that should have been closed out years ago. Some of them we can still spend. Some have a positive balance of maybe a few $100s, and I'm contacting all the grant managers to tell them, you have this much money left, spend it ASAP, because we have to close those out. And some of them are balances that were probably due to the Department of Ed.
Payback.
Payback.
Paybacks.
and not returned to the Department of Ed. So I'm going to put that list together.
Can you give, when you calculate that, could you give the hard figure to us?
Absolutely.
Because we don't want to give any penny back if we don't have to. But if we're
Right.
obligated legally, we have to. But the hard number
Exactly.
would be important.
Exactly. I will do that, yes.
And did I take this note right? Did you say it goes back as far as the year 2010? 2010.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Gomes had a follow-up, followed by Ms. Azak, please. Thank you, Ms. Boyer.
I'm gonna go back a little bit in terms of the contracts. First, it's very absurd that we have all these contracts, especially with no dollar amount. Similar to how people put us in this position, because not everybody can be here all at once to make all these decisions, but they expect us to act on their behalf. When we put someone in a position to oversee whether transportation, hiring personnel, we expect them to go in with the professionalism and the knowledge to know what they're doing and what's supposed to be done. So it's very upsetting to hear that. The other thing too, not only do we have a lot of contracts with no dollar amount, we have vendors that have no contract with us. And I did note it in the meeting that we had previously where we denied paying roughly 150 grand of invoices that came in because a lot of those were from about 2 years earlier. And there were no contracts, there were no signed agreement, what work was done, how much was charged, did we accept or not. And I'm glad you came back and thank you. I know last time I did ask if we could look for those contracts. If not, then to contact the vendor and see what happened or what was provided to us. And I wanted to ask if you guys were able to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Gomes.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Boyer, do you have an update on that one? We were at the Rum Little Theater that night.
Okay, and what was the question? Can you repeat the question?
So we had a list of invoices that came in.
Oh,
it was
yes.
roughly 150 grand.
Yes.
And we denied paying those because a lot of them did not have contracts or signed agreements.
Correct.
And it was about 2 years late, basically.
Yes. So we're still holding them. There's a few of them that we find that we can pay, but not a lot. But I understand I received an email from the legal office at City Hall that they can be approved by being voted by City Council. So we're putting the list together to see if City Council will pay for some of them. Otherwise, we can't pay them.
Oh, hold on. So even if we deny paying these because there's no agreement, nothing, they can still get paid?
Well, it would have to go before to City Council first and then to you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that they overrode you.
But so even if City Council approves it, does the school district have to pay for those?
If you decide to pay them, yes.
So we could still say no because
can.
there is no contract, no proof of work that was performed, correct?
Yes, and in these cases, I would not say that the work or the supplies were not done or supplied to us. I think the problem is that there weren't contracts. There weren't signed contracts, things like that. So all the things that should have happened in procurement over the last few years has not been dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
And have we communicated with the vendors to see why the delay in submitting those invoices?
Yes, some of them have said that they've sent invoices. A lot of invoices come through email now rather than through the regular mail. And in one particular case, they were going to a staff member who no longer worked for the district. So they were going into an empty email or an unlooked at email.
Have we done anything to make sure that doesn't happen or to have at least a centralized email to receive all these invoices so anybody can access and say, hey, this is an invoice that just came in and have not been paid?
Yes, I'd like to have an accounts payable email address set up for that purpose so that it's not assigned to one particular person. It's assigned to anybody in accounts payable who can open that email.
Thank you. My other question goes back to the grants. So for the ones, 130 grants, they are being deactivated, which they all had line items. what are we doing with those? Are we moving them to a different account? Had they been redirected so they can, for instance, if a grant had staff members that were getting paid out of those grants, but we're deactivating them, are they getting moved to a different account so they can still get paid and that can be tracked down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all my question. Thank you.
Just point of information, Mr. Gomes, it could only go before the city council if the mayor files an order with the city council. I'm not going to file anything until the lawyers vet that out. They don't have a contract, they don't have a contract. I'm not trying to put people out of business, but that's what contracts are for.
Exactly.
So I just want to let you know that.
Thank you.
Follow up, Ms. Azak, please.
Thank you. Just to, I had a couple of questions, now it's 3. So to follow up to Mr. Gomes, I believe, I'm not sure if it was our council that had mentioned it, but I believe the vendors had a year where they're dealing with the city budget to submit their invoices. I guess if they submitted them on time, we would have to, as a committee, go back and look at that. They did submit them. They were going to an empty email. I would definitely like to see who those were, rather than waiting 2 years. My question, I drew a blank, because that threw me off. Mr. Clarkson, the private companies, the contracts, one, I thought years ago we had a bid review where they came they submitted bids for the private transportation. Okay. I'm not sure. I could have sworn years ago they did, because I know it's a packet of information they have to submit, get approved. It's a long process. So to have so many of them, that's just, that's a lot. Okay. So you have the list of the vendors. I would like to see end of year, who were the vendors, and I'd like to see what we paid each vendor for the year.
Okay.
Because again, to just reiterate what Mr. Rodriguez said is our transportation company was supposed to be making us money. We were going to be able to let people rent them out. We have them for our athletics, our music, all the sports, different things within within Brockton Public Schools. So it was going to save us money, and we were going to be able to rent them out to others that wanted to rent them out for events and stuff. So if we could just see what the vendor list is, and I'd like to know 2023. What did we pay all those vendors? Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Azak. Ms. Oliver, please follow up.
So the contract ends on June 30th, but we don't have to terminate it by June 30th. We just have to give them 30 days notice.
June 30th anyway, but some of them, we can give them 30 days before June 30th.
So if we have 278 out there, we can slash it in probably like 75%, and
Right.
like 30 days give them notice.
Right, but well, the other thing about terminating 30 days or expiring June 30th is, just because we have a vendor doesn't mean we have to give them any business. We can just, direct the business to whoever we decide to.
True, but I would like to terminate them.
Right, well, we will, but I'm just saying,
Okay.
in between, just because we have them on contract doesn't mean we have to give them, business.
Agreeable. Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up on that, so the vendor contracts has to give notice by June 1st because you have to do 30 days for June 30th. And then the 100 individual, and I'm not advocating to fire people, but the 100 individual contracts, again, is that a 30-day notice? The ones that mirror the BEA that are non-union? That is not a 30-day notice. 60-day notice. Thank you. Any additional follow-ups at this time? Mr. Sullivan, please.
Yes, Mr. Clarkson, the special education transportation, is that supposed to be paid for by that McKinney-Vento?
So some of those costs, yes. There are other costs, other sources like circuit breaker that can address some of those costs, and some of those costs are supported by the non-net spending. So there are a variety of funding sources, and you'll see when TJ is able to make that formal presentation to you about the fiscal 24 costs. Many of those are transportation costs well in excess of the amount that was appropriated, and I can tell you some of those sources to address some of those deficits will be McKinney-Vento and Circuit Breaker and other available sources.
So McKinney-Vento is being used right now?
Yes,
Okay.
but only for the purposes for which it was intended.
Right.
And I believe homeless students, I'm still learning some of the jargon on the school side, but I believe that the McKinney-Vento funds are available also for homeless student transportation.
Correct. Thank you.
Ms. Azak, follow up, please.
Sorry, it's more of just a question. So how long do you think it'll take to get this information?
On the vendors?
Just, well, the vendor list, but as far as like the transportation, what it was when we were leasing them, the cost, just so we can, we have these meetings, but we got to get the info, we got to move on it. It's
We only got 4 months. We got 4 months left in the budget.
I'm tired of spinning our tires here. Like, we got to get stuff done.
Oh,
no, I don't mean it towards you, but it's like.
I agree.
So if we
spinning
can
our tires, though, that was a good.
Perfect, spinning our tires. But if we can just pick a date, so we have it in our calendar, we have a meeting scheduled, we have a lot to cover.
Agreed. So the information on the van transportation we can have with you for you in a day or two by the end of the week.
Okay, packets, that's fine.
Yeah, because that's all readily available information. The analysis on the yellow school buses is a little more involved and is going to take not only gathering information but analyzing it. So I would ask for at least a couple of weeks to really develop an in-depth report that's valuable to you.
Okay, so first week in April?
Yeah, I think that's
First week in April,
reasonable.
if we can schedule transportation. Sorry to be pushy, but it's just, we have a lot to cover, and we really need to schedule these while we're all together and get them in the books. So first week of April, April 2nd? It's a Tuesday? April 2nd?
Yeah.
April 2nd?
That okay, April 2? April 2?
April 2nd?
Thank you. I'm going to ask the school committee members, my fellow school committee members, if we can take a vote to direct the superintendent to work with Mike Morris, again, the city procurement officer, for 2 endeavors. One is to put an RFP out to determine costs for the contracted services for the in-house transportation, right? Let's just get that on the street. Let's just see what the variables are. And the second one is for the contracted transportation, seek bids for single provider or several large providers. And again, we would ask, because the schools don't have a procurement officer, we'd ask Dr. Cobbs to work with Mike on that. I would respectfully ask that we take a vote on that so he could start working with Mike tomorrow on both of those endeavors. It's the will of the committee?
Just, can we just get clarified? So that's just to see what's out there? We're not.
Yeah, no,
okay,
I mean.
Just to see what's out there?
Yeah.
We're not going to enter into anything?
No, we can't,
Okay.
I think putting an RFP on the street is going to give us some cost analysis, right? Might be off the charts, but at least we have something to go with. And then the bids are the same thing for the contracted. Let's just see what's out there. Because if not, what are we going to compare it to?
No, absolutely. All right, fine, thank you.
Is there a motion just to direct Superintendent Cobbs to work with City Procurement Officer Mike Morris for the 2 things. The RFP for the in-house transportation to determine costs for contractual services. And the other one is to seek bids for a single provider or several large providers, and that's for the contracted transportation, the vans. Those are the 2 different things.
So when you say contracted service, you mean the yellow buses, like we have it with first student prior?
That's who the previous provider was,
Right.
yeah.
Right. So it's an RFP for the yellow buses and then another one for the private transportation, for the
Yeah,
smaller.
whatever the procurement officer says how to do it.
Right.
So I make a motion to put an RFP out there for Superintendent Cobbs to work with
Mike
Morris to get the, an RFP.
Yep. For the in-house transportation costs.
For the in-house
And then we could just say an
transportation
RFP for the contracted transportation costs.
And the contracted transportation costs.
Second.
Form of a motion by Mr. Sullivan, second by Mr. Sullivan. I'll just read the roll. Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Ms. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes? Yes. Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Azak?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. And I will text Mike Morris tonight to expect a call from Dr. Cobbs tomorrow. Any additional, Mr. Rodriguez, please.
Mrs. Boyd, knowing that you had a depleted workforce, how is your office structured now? Have you come up with a plan? Are we waiting for TJ to present this to see what support you need in that finance office to make sure that all these numbers are adding up? And
Yep.
Yeah, knowing that, what's the structure now? Like, are you, obviously you're short-staffed, yes?
Yes.
So what is the magic number?
For staff?
Yes.
So, when I've been on for 2 months, and I lost 2 people in that time. So we are about to hire a financial analyst. We've interviewed for that position, so that will be replacing one person. Another one was an administrative person, which we're not replacing at this time. We're looking at a procurement officer to come on board soon, and we're looking for a grants administrator to come on soon. We're doing interviews for all of those, so we'll have 2 to 3 staff members shortly, I hope.
So what would that be, like 7, 8, or is that less
That
than
would total 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, not including me.
Okay.
And I'm just interim, so I'm not there for a long time.
The other thing too that I want to know is specifically like our BEF account. Can you draft that up? I want to know exactly how much money, how did money come in, how did money go out, and every account, you know, that the school district has, and what money we have in there.
Absolutely. I just want to go back to your previous question. So that would be 7 or 8 staff members, but we're still missing the 2 that are out on administrative leave. So those are 2 big, heavy positions that are still not filled.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Azak, follow up, please.
Thank you. So, Mr. Clarkson and Mrs. Boyer. So I know we've run into an issue with not having contracts, whether it's vendors. We really need to get those contracts, and there's a couple that we've brought to your attention. We're getting services and we don't know what we're getting charged. So it's like we really need to buckle down on those, and they're pretty sizable contracts. Well, they're pretty sizable invoices that we get. So if we can try to get those contracts wrapped up, I'd be happy to remind you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional?
I got a question about the budget.
Hearing a visitor is already concluded, I'm sorry.
It goes back to their behavior too.
We can't, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm sorry, under the process. One other thing that I think we need to talk about, and I just mentioned it to Dr. Cobbs, and we've talked about this as committee as well. So there's all these, contracts and all that stuff, but we also have real estate leases that we have to terminate. We have to be able to bring some of those folks into our city/school buildings. We have to figure that out. Dr. Cobbs is working on that with his cabinet, but we're spending a lot of money right now on certain locations, and we can terminate those and bring them to some of the Goddard School is a good example that is still under care and custody of the school. So just wanted to remember that we're spending a lot of money on rent, and some of that can be terminated, and I know Dr. Cobbs is working on it. Any other matters relative to this tonight? Thank you. You have a follow-up, Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, I do. Just, Troy Clarkson, this is one of your bullet points, to hire a procurement officer. That should be done tonight, or do you have a date on that?
I couldn't hear. Tim, some people couldn't hear you. Could you ask that question one more time? I'm sorry.
It was about the procurement officer. It's in this bullet point that we need to hire one. The question is, does that have to be done tonight or at a later date?
So I think I would say that that's in process. I actually have a meeting with the mayor and some of our city staff to discuss how we might make that work. We've had some conversations with Dr. Cobb, so I think that is in the works, but I wanted to highlight it as really important because, as I mentioned earlier, there is only one chief procurement officer, and that is Mike Morris, who can delegate that authority, who can supervise the work, but whomever is brought on to do procurement has to work in concert with Mike. So the question really is, should it be a city person but that's dedicated to the schools, or should it be somebody over here at the schools that works under the direction of the chief procurement officer? So those are the logistical issues that we're trying to work out, but I can assure you it's in the works.
You had another bullet point in here, March 15th was the date. I'm not sure what, something had to be done by March 15th.
Oh, yeah, that was, it was just a suggestion that we set March 15th as a date to stop any spending on expired grants. I think that Trish gave you some really good information that that's well underway, and I think I'm certainly confident that her efforts are moving forward in a very responsible way.
You don't need a motion or anything on that?
I don't think so. I think the message was clear tonight that we need to make that a priority and that Trish is doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. Thank you, Ms. Boyer. Agenda item subsection C on the report of superintendent is items to refer to subcommittee. Are there any matters to refer to subcommittee at this time?
Yes, Mayor. One, we need to do another policy subcommittee for our laptop restitution policy. The next would be a facilities usage subcommittee regarding the school moves and as you mentioned already, canceling leases. And we also need to do a safety and security subcommittee and transportation.
Yeah, I mean, if nobody objects, we could pick the dates tonight, book it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, safety, traffic, and transportation is one subcommittee.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, do you have a list of our meetings? Well, we have a transportation sub, April 2nd, can we add it 6 o'clock?
So that one's all set.
Unless you
April
need it.
2nd. Yeah, April 2nd is fine.
That doesn't work for Mr. Gomes.
It doesn't work,
No.
okay. What do we have next week? Do we have a meeting next week?
I thought we were meeting every week, actually. Every
We should be
Tuesday.
having at least one a week. I'll be traveling towards the end of the last week of March, and I'm traveling the end of April. So it's going to be hard for all of us to be able to make these meetings, but if we can do the majority of them.
Yeah.
So do you want to?
You could probably do 2 in the night.
Yeah, you want to try to do
Please.
two in one night, two the other night, and get them done next week?
Yep.
Okay. Whatever the will is. What are the dates that you want to propose?
You mean as of next Tuesday, the 12th?
I think we have on the 12th. I have safety, traffic, and transportation at 6 o'clock. We do have one next week.
That's the safety one?
That's the safety one at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
So we can probably add another one, a shorter one, maybe a policy.
Policy.
Is that March 12th?
Yes.
March 12th?
Yes. Policy, what would be the time on March 12th for policy?
Probably do it first. It's a short one.
Policy 6 p.m.
Policy 6 p.m. And then the safety would be 6:30? 6:30, does that work? All right.
Will that be here?
Lisa, do you know, are we back in the ROM Little Theater next week or no? You don't know. Okay.
Arnone on the 5th.
We're back here next week,
Back here
okay.
on the
Yep.
12th.
Concert the following day.
That's right, that's right.
The
You'll be there with me.
19th, we're back at the Little Theater.
Okay.
So do you want to, so the 12th, and how about we schedule something for the 19th before our regular school committee meeting?
Yep.
So we have two
Facilities.
with Dr. Cox. What are the other two needed?
Facilities is the only
usage,
one.
right?
Policy and safety security is on the 12th.
Mhm.
Transportation is on the 2nd of April, and so we can do facilities on the 19th.
19th? And that would be at 6 p.m. on the 19th?
It should be after school.
Yes,
Yep.
we have a regular one at
So-
7.
And then just bear in mind, once we hear from Mr. Plant and his team, as soon as he can meet with us, we'll call a special, okay?
Okay.
And we'll post it and all that stuff, but,
I'm sorry to interrupt. So, Mr. Plant, in negotiating a contract, we will have the opportunity to vote on that before the contract is negotiated and
yes,
finalized?
yeah, it's been vetted out by law, procurement, Dr. Cobbs. I think, did you send it to Mr. Mello? Did it go to Peter Mello or no?
Which one?
The Open Architects?
It should go to our attorney.
Yeah, I thought it did. Sarah, you don't know, do you?
No,
Okay, we can verify that. I thought I saw an email that it was going to Mr. Mello too, so we'll verify that tomorrow. Yes, sir.
It's not to be on a Tuesday. Can we avoid Monday and Wednesdays?
Yes.
Because I am unavailable those
Yes.
days. Thank you.
Yes.
Looks like they're all on Tuesdays.
Thursdays are good though, right?
Thursdays, yeah.
All right. Okay, so we have those dates set. So I knew you were going to ask me. April 2 is transportation, correct? But then next week, the 12th, at 6 o'clock, there's a policy subcommittee, followed by a 6:30 safety and security subcommittee. And then on March 19th, 6 p.m. is facilities and usage subcommittee, followed by 7 o'clock regular school committee meeting. Any other matters relative to that? Seeing none, we'll go on to Agenda 4, which is consent agenda. There's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. What is the will of the committee? Mrs. Sullivan?
I'd like to remove letter E.
E. Okay. Any other committee members want to remove any? E is the only one to be removed. In terms of the other A, B, C, D, F, G, and H, what is the will of the committee? Would we take those collectively at this time?
To approve items A, B, C, D, F, G, and H.
Second for motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It was made by Mr. Sullivan, properly seconded by Mrs. Sullivan. We can just show of hands on that one. Show of hands on that one. Yes, that passes. And I'm just going to read that into the record. A is the approval of January 31, 2024 special school committee meeting minutes. B is the approval of January 16, 2024 regular school committee meeting minutes. C is the approval of January 16, 2024 facilities usage and planning subcommittee meeting minutes. D is the approval of 2023-2024 home education request. F is request for authorizations to submit it, proposal and expenditures of funds, which is Title III Immigrant Child and Youth Grant in the amount of $63,058. G is request for authorizations to accept proposal and expenditures of funds, math tutoring partnerships with DESE and Carnegie Learning in the amount of $167,400. H is the acceptance of human resources notifications, which is appointments, certified personnel, appointments non-certified, and finally personal actions, which is leaves of absences, resignations, and retirements. Mr. Sullivan, E, please.
Yes, I don't know if anyone's here from West Middle School, any representatives, the band director or the principal, but there's 100 West Middle School band and chorus students that will be attending this trip. So I believe the chaperone is 1 to 10. So it only says there'll be 8 chaperones, so I think we need 2 more chaperones. Dr. Cobb, is that correct?
That's within your book. If you go to tab 6, it spells it out. Permission for 100 middle school students, band director, chorus director, and 8 chaperones. So that's 10 people altogether, 10 adults.
But we do need 10, right?
They have 10.
Oh.
Right,
Okay, I didn't notice that, sorry.
Band
Thank
director,
you.
chorus director, and 8 chaperones.
All right, I did read it, but I didn't take that into consideration. Thank you. I was looking at the numbers.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve letter E,
Motion.
out-of-state field trip, West Middle School to Salem, New Hampshire.
And that's dated June 7th, 2024. There was a motion made by Mr. Sullivan. It was duly seconded. I'm going to give it to Ms. Oliver, but Mr. Gomes was right there. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. That does pass unanimously. Now we have 5 unfinished business. Discussion and potential vote from the policy subcommittee meeting, March 5, 2024, which happened tonight, right before this meeting. What is the will of the committee at this time?
Motion to approve the, well, first of all, we had the policy subcommittee earlier, went through our original drafts, additional drafts. Again, I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Connors for all of her help in putting together the feedback from all the faculty, which is extremely important so that they have a voice. So we have a final version of it. I'd like motion to approve the final version of the cell phone policy so that Principal McCaskill can now use this and work with his leadership team.
Form of a motion. Is there a second on that motion? Second. Motion was made by Mrs. Ayers, properly seconded by Mrs. Sullivan. I'll just do a roll. Mrs. Sullivan? Yes. Mrs. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes? Yes. Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Azak?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
I'm a yes. It passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Now we're coming up to election of vice chair. And as we've done in the past, I'm going to entertain nominations to put a name or names on the ballot. Is there a nomination at this time?
Nomination to vote for Tony Rodriguez for vice chair.
So motion, is there a second on that?
Second.
Mr. Rodriguez's name is on the ballot. Are there any other nominations at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to close nominations. Now we will go around to vote on the nomination. Mrs. Sullivan?
Abstain.
Ms. Ayers?
Tony Rodriguez.
Mr. Gomes?
Tony Rodriguez.
Ms. Oliver?
Tony Rodriguez.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Tony Rodriguez.
It's fun to vote for yourself. Ms. Azak?
Tony Rodriguez.
Mr. Sullivan?
Tony Rodriguez.
And I vote for Tony Rodriguez. Congratulations, Vice Chair. So Mr. Rodriguez has been elected. He will be Vice Chair for the year 2024. We look forward to working with you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you very much. Would you like to say anything at this time?
I never thought I would be sitting in this seat, being a product of Brockton Public Schools. I've seen the failures when I was as an adult where they failed me as a child. Some of my friends, some of my kids that I grew up with came and spoke today. A lot of people that's been reaching out. I know it wasn't a power struggle. Some people might look at it that we wasn't getting work done. We all conversate every day. It's a happy moment for me because of how I grew up, right across the street, Chester Ave, Butler Street, Eggers Park. And then my parents brought us over to the west side, not that I was an Easton. But we have a lot of work to do. And it's going to be my job making sure that we all work together. We disagree. I know a lot of people say some things about Joyce, but me and her, we fight every day. But we're gonna work together, and we're gonna make sure that we get this black cloud over our heads, and making sure that BPS is properly funded, and making sure that we make Brockton #1 again, because that's where we need to be. Thank you.
Again, on January 1st when we got sworn in, I talked about collaboration, and then Tony, Mr. Vice Chair, said the same thing. It's about collaboration, and we will continue to do that. So again, congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair. We will now go on to Agenda 6, new business. Is there any new business by the membership at this time? Any new business? I actually have one. I'm going to humbly ask, and I've done this in the past, I would like us to have a standing agenda item on every school committee meeting relative to school safety update. And that could be a myriad of things. It could be Brenda Perez in her capacity as chief, could be Kevin McCaskill in his capacity as principal, could be the SROs, it could be Dr. Cobbs in his capacity, it could be people from DESE because they're paying for that school safety audit. So if nobody objects, I'd like going forward to put a school safety update on the agenda. Is there a formal motion on that, please?
Motion. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Jay.
You got it. Go ahead. Teamwork.
Someone make the motion. Ms. Azak.
To add updates on school safety on our weekly agenda,
regular
or
school
regular
committee
school
agenda.
committee agenda.
Okay, that's the formal motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. It was made by Ms. Azak, properly seconded by Ms. Sullivan. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hands. Thank you. We'll go that. That's going to be on there going forward.
Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I probably should have gone on to unfinished business. Everything's been fine so far. And I don't want to upset everybody, but where are we with safety at the high school? Have we hired personnel? I know there was a job ad. Where are we? And I know I've gotten a ton of emails from people offering their services, but it's a business and they want to get paid and we don't have the money. But I mean, every day we have email after email. If that gentleman's willing to work for free and they're able to work something out with us until we can hire personnel. I mean, I know there's query checks, I know there's agreements. It sounds easier sometimes than it really is, because you're bringing, where are we? Because I don't want to keep seeing, we do have positive at the high school. We do. We have an amazing, amazing high school. We have amazing students. And we have, our students should be making the news for all the positive stuff that we have. And sadly, I'll put this under announcements, but the letter that was sent to the governor was not a stunt. We heard our teachers, we heard our students. And I don't know about you guys, but there's many sleepless nights. You know, it's every day, all day. My full-time job has been on hold. I've been doing the best that I can. This is not easy for all of us. It really isn't. You know, these are lives that we're in charge of. And I want to just see, what can we do? We hear them week after week. I've gone there and I stood. I know years ago I asked if we could have volunteers. And I know we ran into an issue with the unions. So can we get volunteers, or would it be an issue if, you know, with the unions, if we had volunteers just come in? I stood there for 3 hours until I got called out. But I stood there for 3 hours and I saw our school is amazing. And I know the camera's right there. Brockton High School is amazing. We have so many positive things. And this is what you guys really need to report on. That letter was not to be negative, and that letter should have never gone to the media. Shame on the person that sent that to the media. That letter should have never gone to the media within 24 hours. We didn't have the opportunity to speak to the governor. We asked for a meeting with the governor, and we get it. We understand, but we just wanted to sit down and see what resources we had, what resources are out there. And you know what? That negative letter that some people think is negative, I'm sorry, guys. New Mexico, read up on it. New Mexico, they went in and they were helping the schools. Massachusetts, they were driving the buses in Massachusetts during COVID. It's not a negative. It's a negative when a lot of people make it a negative. And I'm sure my emails and my phone's going to keep blowing up. My stress level has been high, guys, but I want to be able to put my head on the pillow at night and know that I'm doing what I can do, like the rest of the committee. I don't want to put you on the spot, but we really need, can we see about getting volunteers, and how would that happen with the unions? I know there's a lot of parents that would volunteer, but we also run into, what if something happens to them? We're responsible. You know, so that's liability-wise. You can't just have people wandering. And that's another thing. I know a lot of people want to go up to the school. We have a policy. You just can't walk into the school. Our principal is there overseeing the school. We get it. Everyone wants to walk in. We have a policy. You really should make an appointment. And if you don't have a query check, you should not be walking around our schools unannounced. So I'm sorry, we can't. So yeah, they have to be queried, things like that, for safety of our students. So I didn't mean to go on and on, but it's been building up. And social media, I had to shut down. I had to shut down on the social media. Brockton High's it's an amazing school, guys. Let's show the positive. And like a lot of schools all over the country are going through what we're going through. Sadly, our letter went to the media, and it was twisted negative. So you got CNN, Inside Edition, every news, New York Post, you name them. They're emailing us and they're calling us. I haven't talked to them. Because you know what? It's about keeping our students and our staff safe, and it's going on in all the schools. It's not just Brockton. It's going on in a lot of schools all over the country. Can we look into volunteers, and how would that maybe have them sign some kind of a disclaimer as far as liability? I have no problem dedicating 1 day a week, a few hours. It's only a certain amount of hours, just until we can fill those positions, to show our staff we're listening to them. Actually, the students are reaching out to us too. The students are reaching out, and
Make a motion.
I just can't have meeting after meeting. I don't mean to be difficult. We just can't have meeting after meeting. And those that said, why didn't we do anything in November? Well, we were waiting, and then holidays hit, and then we were waiting. Here we are. So week after week, we have to do something. We have to do something.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Is this on? Just to echo what Mrs. Azak said, we were working on that letter for weeks. I'm glad that the communities got together and did what they did. It needed to be a spotlight. That letter wasn't meant for the media. If that was the case, we would have emailed them. It was only elected officials, and one elected official took it upon himself and sent it to the media because he's the one that made this a charade. This wasn't something to be a charade. Our job is not to shed, it doesn't mean to shine negative light on the city. Our job is to show positive light in the city. I'll put a motion on the floor to authorize Dr. Cobbs to engage with community members and volunteers and vet it out to come into our schools and volunteers and making sure we support our teachers and our students.
That was form of a motion by the vice chair. Is there a second?
Second. I beat you, Mr. Gomes.
So there was, I'm going to give it to Mr. Gomes, because I was looking that way. There was a second by Mr. Gomes, but on the motion, Mr. Sullivan, you had a question.
Yes, and what is it to do?
Mr. Vice Chair, if you could just clarify for the school committee.
Motion to approve Dr. Cobbs to get into an agreement and talks with community engagement groups and volunteers to come into our schools and help volunteer to support our teachers and our students.
But they would have to be quarried and fingerprinted if they go into our schools.
Yep.
What specifically are they volunteering to do?
I think we could have mentors. That was one of the biggest things that I advocated for. We need those in our schools.
So there is a motion on the floor. On the motion, Mr. Gooding came here tonight. I know Jamal Gooding. My office did reach out to Jamal as early as today as well, Stephanie in my office. So we will be meeting with him. But there's a motion on the floor. It was properly seconded by Mr. Gomes. All in favor, and I'll do a roll call. Mr. Sullivan?
So it is to.
It's to direct the superintendent.
But I think we should work with the superintendent on.
No, of course we will, but we're directing him as a school committee.
Okay, yes.
Okay, the answer is yes. Mrs. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Vice Chair?
Yes.
Ms. Azak?
Absolutely.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, and we should make that effective tomorrow, right? So, just point of information, I want to clarify. So the school safety update that's going on the agenda going forward, that's not just Brockton High. That's going to be our middle schools, elementary schools as well. So I just want everybody to be aware of that as well. So we'll go to Agenda 7, announcements. Is there any announcements at this time? Seeing none, we got to go into executive session, and I need to read the following. Agenda 8, executive session, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions and preparations for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, all non-union individual contracts. Is there a motion to go in executive session at this time?
Motion to go into executive session.
Motion was made by
Second.
Mrs. Azak, is seconded by Mr. Sullivan. I need to call a roll call relative to the executive session. Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Azak?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
I'm a yes. We are going into executive session. We are not coming back into open session. Thank you.